Okay. Hi, everyone. Let me just make sure we're all good here. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Cool. Hi, everyone. I have my Twitch volume still on. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Von Rieden, better known as vonnart Online, and welcome to my weekly Wednesday live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, and mainly they're to start a conversation about art, what it's like being an artist, any tips on techniques. And normally I'm joined by my co-host, Sean Price. He is out in Salt Lake, so I will be solo streaming it today. And I'm going to take this stream to kind of be more of a teaching opportunity. And something that I noticed because I was at Emerald City this past weekend and going through all the different booths, I realized there's like a few tips and tricks to make your art maybe look better or like improve the quality quickly without like compromising a lot of time or effort. And I wanted to share those with you today. So I'm going to go through them. But before that, as I like to start off all these streams, if you could put where you're watching from, I like to do a shout out and then we'll get started as people are joining in here. I can finish up the marketing as well. And for those of you who don't know what Emerald City is, it's a comic convention in Seattle. It is one of the biggest cons of the year. I mean, there's definitely bigger ones, but it's definitely one of those well-known and kind of respectable conventions that you hear about. So I honestly had such a great time. It was a weird instance where I went and I don't know if I should be saying this now or when the stream actually starts. So I guess I'll give you a little startup while people are saying where they're watching from. I got really sick the first like 3 days, and I had this really bad suitcase fee of $325 because my suitcase was 3 inches too tall. And then I accidentally, well, not accidentally, but I kind of had poor planning where all my friends and my roommates ended up being at different hotel rooms because we overbooked. And I had a hotel room all to myself, which cost like $1,500. So immediately in my head, I thought of all the expenses and I was just overwhelmed and I felt pretty much defeated before I even went. And it was not the best feeling, but I had the best plane ride with Ashley, my old roommate Cloverkin, and it like brought my mood up instantly. And from that point forward, I was like, I'm going to treat this like a vacation. I don't care if I'm going to make a lot of money. If anything, I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to meet a lot of new artists and make the most of it. And wow, did that change a lot of things with my perspective. And I'll get more into it as we start the stream. But basically, I just want you guys to know I broke my record for how much I've made at a con. And I feel like part of that was this attitude of I'm just going to have a good time. And I'm not saying that obviously the quality of your products and your presentation, like all that definitely adds up. But I do think there's an attitude shift that I had that I want to say lent itself to me making more genuine connections with people because I wasn't trying to sell things. I was like actually trying to meet people. And I took like I want to say like five, like altogether 5 hours just going around talking to different artists at the show. And I have some of their work with me and I'll share that too. But it really was interesting how the weekend played out. And I'm really excited to share that with you guys. But like I said, and what the stream's going to be on today, as I was looking through all the different booths, I realized there's like little tweaks or tips that I wanted to tell them to like help just elevate their style or their craft just a little higher. And I want to share those with you. Okay, but before all that, let's do the shout outs here. And I know a lot of you have been asking if I can put these on YouTube. I finally just started putting these live streams on YouTube. Why, thank you, Zigorois, for following. And you can watch that. There should be a link below. Okay, let's see here. Oh, you guys are being funny. Hey, Vulpix. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. Uncanny. This job gives me motivation to draw. It's not bad, but definitely I'm sitting at work pretending to work. I know that feeling. Okay, here they go. J4 Dota says, hello from La Planta, Argentina. GK from the UK. Show hi from Washington State. And if you guys have a different name that you'd like me to call that you prefer instead of your username, let me know. I have a list pulled up on the side here. And it takes me like 3 or 4 times to remember and memorize your preferred name, but I'll definitely get it. I feel like Sean's getting better at that too. Caroline. Oop, wait. It scrolled on me. There we go. From Iowa, Phantom September from Finland, Lopa from Iceland. Hey, Lopa. Smack City from St. Louis. Rubio from Poland. Cactus from Croatia. Chris from Ohio. Well, hello. Vulpix from Texas. Always at Spring from Sweden. Leo from Italy. Hey, Leo. Art Luffy from New York, US. Haley from Utah. Fem from Belgium. Hey, Fem. LED. Oh, I like that. That's clever. Says, hello from Portland. I'm glad I was able to see you at Emerald City and pick up your sketchbook. Hey, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to get into why it was such a good show. And I genuinely really enjoyed being there, even though I was really sick. And behind my booth, I just felt like I was like booger coming out and like, hi, I'm Tim. Nice to meet you. What is there any questions? Let me know. Like, I just felt so out of it, and I probably looked out of it too. Red Panda from Croatia. Yulia from Ukraine. Bran from Florida. Hi, Bran. Oh, thank you, Kratos. Oh my gosh. Look at all those gray triangles. Oh, they are not affecting the hearts whatsoever. They're just sitting on top. We've got a heavy heart in our jar, apparently. What does that say? What's the underlying metaphor there? Cactus says, can't say I got to study, but definitely want to watch this later. It'll be on Twitch. It'll be on Twitch and YouTube. Litzy says, hello from Long Island. Zigorius from Brazil. Rubio from Mars 7. Dirtle Turtle from Germany. Jopo from the Netherlands. Hey, Jopo. Art Luffy on Long Island as well. Oh, I like when people are able to recognize other people that are like in the same vicinity. And we've even had a few people from the stream like meet up in person, which is really cool. And we also have a Discord community, which me and Sean are going to take more of an active part starting soon. We realized it got a little much for us, especially with con season starting off, and it like hit us really hard. So instead of the weekly challenges, we're going to do monthly challenges. And the first one's going to start tomorrow. So if you're watching this today, or if you're on YouTube, this is March of 2018, and we're going to do a foot challenge. I think drawing feet is incredibly difficult and intimidating, but when you really break it down and just attempt trying it, I think it'll make it a lot easier for you. All right, let's see here. Sketchita from Canada. Hello, hello. Thank you, Brand. Yeah, it was one of the... I had a really good time at that show. Default Monkey from Cello from the High Alps of Switzerland. Oh, my. Nikom from Milwaukee. Well, hello, fellow Wisconsinite. Oh, and be sure to put @vonnart before any comment or question. That way I'm able to see it when I'm going back and forth between the drawing and the comment section. From Poland. Mitten from Columbus. Hey, Mitten. How are you doing? I know I should say Mitten, but I feel like at this point we've gotten that established. Is Sirkon from Poland. Sketchio, hello from Bucharest. Is that a city or a town? That's cool. Show hee hee. Okay, show hee hee. Okay, I'll remember that. But just in case, I'm going to write that on our list here. Show hee hee. Mashi Yumble from Hawaii. Aloha. Hey, I'm actually looking into doing a convention in Hawaii later this year. I'll let you know if I actually make it or not. Oh, Renato, I'm sorry. Oh, you know why? My list. Hold on. Let me fix that really quick. I accidentally copy and pasted over it. I should know that. Come on, Tim. Hi, Auxilian. Renato, I should say. Kratos from Colombia. Merbar, I think that says, from Argentina. Hugh Eyes Art from South Texas. Man, there's a lot of you guys today. And Grace from North Texas. Okay, I think that's all of the shout outs for that. Okay, so let's get started. I know we're already like 10 minutes in. That was a lot of shout outs, guys. That was great. So what are we going to be talking about? And once I get into it and once I start drawing, then we can start to talk more about like conventions or like the people I met, blah, blah, blah. But let's actually focus on the topic of today. And that is how to quickly improve your quality. And what does that mean? So when I look at certain aspects of art, I feel like there's little tweaks that I made in my own art that improved it vastly with little effort. And I did some of them in like the pre-drawing. I don't know why it's so dark in here. Hold on. Let me lighten that all up. And I'm going to go through, I have like a few notes on the side there. And I'm going to go through a few like specific examples. But right off the bat, let's go through the generics. And I think the generics of how to improve your quality quickly is the ones that you always hear, those advice that you hear on like a Pinterest page. It's like draw every day, just do it, be critical and analyze your work, experiments, like things that you kind of already know. So I'm not going to go through all of those. Instead, I'm going to try to give more specific examples because sometimes I feel those vague inspirational quotes, yeah, they're kind of lingering there, but you can't really grasp them and they don't really mean anything unless if you apply it or if you like go through like something and all of a sudden that quote is like, oh yeah, I wish I would have done that sooner, because until then they're just words. So one of the first things, I'm trying to think of how I want to go through all of them, or like if there's an order of importance. Yeah, I guess I'll go through the number one. The easiest way to improve your quality quickly in a piece is, or at least in my, and mind you, this is all my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. You might have a different opinion. That's okay. Let's make this a discussion. Put @vonnart before your comment, or even if you don't agree with me, put in the comment section why you don't. So my number one would be hands. I think when I look at someone's art, and if they have a really strong sense of drawing a hand and how to place it in the angles, proportion, anatomy, if they make an extra effort to put their hands in a character piece where they really go all out, to me that's like the easiest way to turn your art from novice or amateur or college level to more of a professional. And even with my example, the reason that I did this hand specifically is I drew this type of hand all the time. If you like look through my old archive on DeviantArt, all of my digital art swordplay characters, here I'll zoom in for all of this stuff, have this type of hand. And oh, is my zoom not working? Oh no, wait. I guess, is that still, that's decent quality, right? That's not too blurry for you guys? I hope not. Let me know. But yeah, this was the type of hand I would draw for everything. Every character piece I would do, it'd be like the static T-pose, slightly 3/4 angle. And it's, I mean, it's a standard concept art pose, but this hand gets very boring and it's safe. It's incredibly safe. So my way of helping to fix that is to take reference pictures of your hands of whatever character you're doing and try to make them as expressive as the character themselves. So if you have a character, like I have a character Tracy, and she's very, I'll say promiscuous. She's a spitfire, and she's very confident. And the way that I want to present her is a very confident pose. So instead of having hands that are like, you know, by her side and like in the pocket, I feel like that wouldn't be a good, accurate depiction of who she is. So instead, I'm going to pull her hand like behind her hair and like pulling her hair back, like showing the inside of the palm. And then their other hand might be doing something a little more showboaty, more elegant, but still she's not hiding her hands. And I think that's very important for a character that's more exuberant to like have their hands be a vocal point just as much as what the character's wearing. So my first piece of advice with how to improve your quality quickly, I mean, this deals mainly with characters, but put a focus and emphasis on hands. And the more that you practice doing hands and the more that you implement what I'm saying here, I feel like it just increases the overall look of your art. All you did was just change the hand position from by the side to slightly up. And yeah, for the first few times, it may look kind of off. It may not look super accurate, but it doesn't mean like every hand has to be super perspective coming toward the camera or like really weird angles. Instead, look how simple this hand is, yet I feel like there's more life, or there's more of a dynamic look at this hand. It's more interesting to look at than this hand because we got some crossover. There's fingers underneath. Where all of these, it just seems like a weird doll, you know, like a porcelain doll that is lifeless. And with characters, you want to make them feel as life-filled as possible. And I definitely think hands are an easy way of doing that. Okay, and in between each of these little tips, I'm going to try to answer the questions, or I'm going to be better about making sure I'm not missing a lot of these here. Let's see here. Chris says, I must soak up everything I learned today so I can apply it while I'm in Japan next week, even though I should probably relax. That's amazing. You're going to Japan? Hey, congrats, man. That's great to hear. But yeah. Hey, Melbourne. I'm finally catching a stream. Good to see ya. Hey, how are you doing, Melpa? If you guys don't know Melpa, she's been killing it recently. Sketchios. Oh, Romania, capital city. Oh, I missed some. I'm sorry. Solomon says, currently on my way to touchdown in Madison for my final interview with this company. I won't be able to stop in too long, but I hope it's a great stream. Hey, thanks for stopping in for a little bit. Brand says, was that Bobby Chu like, or what is Bobby Chu like? He's such great information for artists. Yeah, he was just a really nice guy. I kind of knew this. I've talked to Bobby on Twitter, not like super informal, but just, you know, as like a back and forth. And I think there's a level of respect that artists seem to have for one another when they hit a certain threshold where they're so busy. It's not like I can just, hey, Bobby, you want to just talk for a couple hours? It's like, hey, I respect what you do. Keep doing what you're doing. And then you leave it at that. So that's kind of what my interaction with Bobby was. But he was super cool. Let's see, says, I have a random question that's a little off topic, but what's with everyone doing a mass exodus from Insta to Vero? Seems like a bunch of creatives left. I think I want to talk about this at the end of the month. I kind of want to give Vero a little bit of time to see if it develops or if it does just kind of fade away. I'm getting the impression it's more on the fade away side. I think starting off, it had a really strong start, but since it has still been kind of buggy and not enough people are using it over Instagram, I don't know what the future of it will look like, and I don't want to imply, or I don't want to have a stance on it when I don't even feel confident on how I feel about Vero yet. So in a few weeks, I will. Default Monkey says, how do you get so smooth transitions in the shadow? I will definitely go through that too. That's something on my list. Moltzen says, are you done with digital art? I really miss your full color pieces. No, I'm not fully done with digital art. I just prefer doing traditional, but you'll definitely see some more digital with me out of my swordplay and doing the backstory book. Oh, and thanks for everyone that joined my Patreon. It's been really great. I feel like it gives me more obligation to finish at least a page a month of swordplay, and then I'll share with you guys how I made the page, a little backstory and info on the page. But that book will have at least 5 more color illustrations. So yeah, I'm not done with color. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. The next one I wrote down, and I think this, I wish I would have told myself this while I was in college, because I think it would have helped me faster with the way I was rendering things. And when I say rendering, for those of you who don't know, rendering for me, it means how you're detailing something out, how you're adding the values, how you're adding the texture. That's rendering. It's a 3D term that I kind of adopted, and I've been using that term for the past like 6 years, and it's become so commonplace for me that I forget that it might sound kind of weird to people that are new. So the second piece of advice I had, you know what, maybe I'll make a list. Hold on. You know what, I will make a list. Let's start. Can you see this? Yeah. Number 1, hands. 2 would be rendering different materials differently. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Oh, we're going down a dark path here. That is not right at all. Hold on. Differently. So what do I mean by that? So when I started doing digital art, I kind of had the same process of rendering everything. It would be kind of a rounded shape. And then there would be a light source. And then as it would go out from the light source, it would get darker. and then there'd be some bounce light coming back up. So in the end, everything kind of had the same look to it, which it kind of worked as a style, but I realized I was treating different materials the same, and some people couldn't tell, like, is this leather? Is this supposed to be cloth? Is this cotton? Like, what are you trying to depict here? So instead of rendering everything with this pillow shaded look, I started rendering things how I thought they should be rendered. So all of a sudden, leather looked a lot different than chiffon or silk or satin. Or I guess more extremes would be like a rock surface texture would be rendered differently than a paper towel. Even though they still have that crinkly, kind of waved out pattern look to it, I would render them differently. And I think that speaks volumes on characters, because a lot of the times different fabrics have different weights to them. So do I have any examples on me? Hold on. Okay, so like I'm going to show you a little preview of what my Patreon people got last month. So essentially, this wooden stake here, I'm going to be rendering. I know it's probably not the most in focus. Something's wrong with my camera. That's okay. The wooden texture that I created here, I rendered differently than the ground it's sitting in, than the fabric on this kid's overalls here, and even on the skin. So you can see probably really lightly, but I added and I hinted at the texture of denim on the surface of the fabric here. And with the wood, I really made an effort to show the different lines and the creases of the bark. And then on the rope, you add those little lines to signify the twine or whatever it is wrapping on itself to create that illusion or that look. Or even with the knot. And I wish I would have started doing this sooner. So if you guys are in that same mode where everything you're kind of rendering the same, take a step back, look at the way you're rendering like boots, and are you rendering your boots the same way you're rendering a dress? Because in my mind, there should be a difference. And I think this is lending itself toward more of a realistic style. And I think that's maybe what it's coming across as. But I want you guys to know, even with like an animated style or something that's more stylized, there still should be a distinct look between a leather boot and a silk dress. And obviously, if you're doing like a flat or cell shaded style, it's going to be a little more difficult, but it still can be done. And I think a lot of it has to do with like the lines that you're adding in, if you can imply weight really well. And like with a silk dress, you should definitely be adding a lot more lines. I'm trying not to render because it's more of a stylized. And then with like a boot, I would add more wrinkles. I would try to show the weight. The shoelaces, whatever it might be. So even without any shading, you can show the difference. I don't know why I did them like touching like this. But you should still be able to tell the difference just in lines of the different materials that you're working with. And then this can go to even an extreme of like glass versus like a wood, or I'm like looking around the room, foliage. I think there should be a very clear distinction between a leaf and a leaf made of glass. Actually, that's a great example. So like if I did a leaf, just like an organic looking leaf, like let's say that was my real leaf. If I was to do a glass leaf, I would probably make it a little more manufactured looking, a little more perfect. And then in the way that I would render things out, I would probably have like little reflection glares. Or I guess this almost looks like jelly or something, or like silicone leaf. But you can see there, even with like these few simple lines, I haven't even really gotten into rendering or detailing. You can tell, okay, there's an obvious difference between these two. I can't quite tell what that is yet, but if I further rendered it, it'd become more clear to the viewer. So always think about the different materials and properties that you're working with and that you're including, and make sure that you're trying to show a distinction. Oh, someone just messaged me that I forgot to edit the Twitch. There we go. So yeah, that would be my number 2 tip, is rendering different materials differently. And I think a lot of it would have to come into like the final render. So if I did take this further, which I'm not going to go too much because I have a lot of tips that I want to share with you guys today. But I mean, I guess if you can just pretend if you're seeing it in the style that I normally render things in, I'd probably take this leaf. I would really look at like the veining in the leaf. Use reference. That's going to be on one of my tips, but I feel like that should go without saying. Where then if I was doing this glass one, I would really look at reference of glass and ornamental figures, or even like glass flowers, and see how would they render the leaves with it being more of a glass. And I think there would be a lot more reflection and surface texture that I have to worry about, or even if it was made of jelly or whatever it might be, I definitely want to be using reference. Okay, let's see where my list is. And like I said, these are in no order of significance. I'm just going down my list. Let me get a few questions in before we move on to number 3. Oh, there's a lot. Hi, everyone. Default Monkey says, how do you get... Oh, no, I got that one. I got that. Guy Webb says, is Sean not joining you today? Me and Sean are having a really big fight right now, so no. No, he's in Salt Lake City. He'll be joining next week. He's coming back next Tuesday. And yeah, he wanted me to say hi for you guys. Hey, thank you, XQTR, for subscribing. That was really nice. Let's see if that affects the pot. Whoa. Hey, thank you. Yeah, and me and Sean were talking too about how, well, we'll tell you next week. We'll tell you next week about what we got planned for the future. Brand says, I heard that life drawing is one of the best ways to learn to get better at art. Yep. Me and the roommates are going to a life drawing session this Saturday in Milwaukee. And I haven't been to one in a few times, or a few years. No, I did it at Spectrum a couple years ago, but I think that was the best class for me while I was in college, to kind of get a humble pill and having to swallow it, because a lot of artists around me were better at proportions and characters than I was. And I feel like I came out of high school thinking that people were my strong suit. And then I come to college and I go to life drawing and feeling kind of inadequate. But that gave me like a fuel, like I got a fire in my belly, and I was like, okay, I need to get better at life drawing. I need to get better at proportions, anatomy. So I really took life drawing seriously, and I think I learned a lot from that. Hey, James Zapata, how are you doing? Man, I always get surprised when you come to these streams because I just respect you so much as an artist. So thank you for coming. Brand says, you spell check on the word of your list. Yeah, I know, right? Hopefully. I pride myself on some things like math. I feel I'm pretty good at biology, but grammar, spelling, and history, not my strong suits. Okay, I think that's all the questions we got. And just remember, if you guys have a question in between these, just make sure you put @vonnart before the comment or question. Okay, number 3. This one I wrote down because I see this a lot, and like just taking an extra minute or two can really elevate the look of your work. And I'm talking about taking the way that you render zippers from having this like weird zigzag pattern. And I know my camera won't be able to zoom in right now. I think I gotta get a new camera, but I actually took the time and I individually drew the zipper because it has a weird pattern to it. So if like I was to do a close-up, zippers kind of have this block, or most zippers, I shouldn't say all zippers. And they kind of have this kind of tooth to it. Something like that. And when you're drawing it on a really small scale, you can kind of get away with just doing this line here. But Whoa, does that make an improvement when I look at someone that actually draws a zipper line versus someone that just does a little ziggle? And I want you guys to know it really doesn't take that long to do a zipper line. A lot of people come to me and they are impressed with like the very simplistic, mundane things in my drawings. And it's almost like I want to tell them, it's not that I'm doing anything different. I'm just more patient, or I'm putting that little extra time into a detail like a zipper line. Because oftentimes, yeah, it might not be the most fun. It's not like rendering an eye, obviously, is a lot of fun, or at least for me, it's a lot of fun. But rendering a zipper, not so much. But I know that you have to take the good with the bad, and not everything in your drawings can be like a pure joy to draw. I mean, if it is, I mean, congrats. I don't know how you do it, because I certainly don't enjoy rendering everything in my piece. And I think it was Ross Draws. If you guys don't know him, he does a lot of these YouTube videos, and he talks about instant gratification areas, or, oh, no, I think this was someone different. I can't remember. But essentially, he would talk about how he would save some of these like really gratifying moments in his art that he knew would be personally satisfying. So like when I'm working, drawing the eyes or adding a 4B or a darker pencil to my work after I've already laid the foundations, super satisfying. Doing a zipper line, not so satisfying. So I try to balance doing some of the more mundane parts with some of the fun parts. So like on the angel piece that I'm working with, I'm going to have to do probably like 100 feathers. And yeah, I'm sure after the fourth one, I might not enjoy drawing feathers as much. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to like whip through it, or I'm going to lower the quality per feather as I go down. It's like I need to take a break. So instead of doing all the feathers at once, I might do like 3 a day. And if I can just do 3 a day where I give the best effort I can on those feathers, then you know what? When I'm done with the third feather, I'm done. I don't want to see it for another day. Why, thank you, Rowanar, for following. I don't even want to look at it. And I think that's a good way to look at art in your general when you're doing personal pieces, because my best pieces, I think, have been the ones where I don't flash through it as fast as I can. It's where I really try to have it on a slow cooker, and every now and then I might add a few ingredients, or I try to make it better, but I know it's going to be a slow cook, and it's not going to be something that I can post tonight. And it might not even be something I can post by the end of the week, but it's something I can be really proud of when eventually I do finish it. So zippers are something that, honestly, guys, it takes, I might do a time-lapse video to show how fast it is to draw a zipper line on both sides of like a jacket. Not to prove a point, but just to show you guys, it really isn't that hard. And once you do it once, you're like, oh, yeah, I can do this from now on. And then all of a sudden your zipper line it looks better. So zipper it was one that I wrote down while I was at the con, because I was thinking about the stream that I would do this week. I knew Sean wasn't going to be with me, so I was like, oh, what can I talk about? And I was like, you know what, I'm going to have it be a little more educational. All right, let me see if I have any questions before moving on to the next one. Gonzarelloco says, can I virtually pat your head? There you go. Why, thank you, Fennec, for following. I think that said Fennec. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Okay, I'm going to move on. I feel like you guys are either listening intently or just doing something completely else, because I'm talking about educational stuff that sometimes, I was in a classroom once. I know what it's like when the teacher just rambles. Okay, next one. Double seams. And I know that this one kind of relates to zippers, but what is a double seam? So when you're drawing the edge of clothes, let me see. I'm going to move this over. So this was number 2. All right, so this is number 4. So a double seam, and I'm going to do kind of a larger scale drawing because of my camera not working as well. So imagine this is like the edge of a jacket. Imagine like this is a button or something. So some people will just leave it like this, but my challenge to you is to add a seam, because if you look at clothing, there's usually a seam that is rolled over, and that's how the fabric gets that nice crisp edge. And I think this probably comes a lot from my passion for fashion design. I really like looking at clothing and how it's created and looking at different materials and whatnot. And the more that I learn about fashion, I feel like I implement that in my character work, and I feel like it elevates it because I'm adding these practical little details that are realistic and ones that add to the look of not only the character, but what they're wearing. So then as I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, well, if this is a button, maybe there's like the little seam that the button has to fit through. And then, like, let's say there were a bunch of buttons. All of a sudden, we could add that all the way up. And then we're like, well, maybe there's another seam because there's an inner lining. And you could even like do the little stitching mark. Oh, actually, you know what? I might put that under our double seams and stitching. Because before it looked like this. And you can see the difference already. All of a sudden, this feels more like of a piece of fabric that's been sewn or it's been worked with by hand. And what a double seam is, and I do this in my art all the time, so you guys might be able to see it if you look at my art pretty closely. A double seam is, I almost want to like draw this bigger. So if this was a closer up look at the drawing here, at this point, if it's this close, I'm going to, draw the button really detailed, draw the stitching that goes in the holes of the button, all that good stuff. Maybe show a little closer up of what that button pocket looks like. All right, but anyways, a double seam is when you do this with like a little river that goes in between. And the way that I render this little river is I'll push the gradient in the value this way. So I'll push it up, and on the other side, I'll also push it up. So it creates like this little valley. And all of a sudden, that double seam, it feels realistic. It feels like you can touch it. There's texture if you like render it with some cross hatching or whatever it might be. And all I did was I added 2 lines and then I shaded outward from that valley. And I feel like this improves the look of my stuff dramatically. And then sometimes I'll get crazy. I'll add like another stitch line. And I mean, there comes a point where it looks a little hodgepodge where you're just not practical with it. But the great thing about fashion is it doesn't necessarily always have to be practical. A lot of the times, especially runway or like avant-garde, it is over the top for the sake of style and shape and design. So I kind of just like have fun with fashion, where I would much rather see something like this where it may linger on the impractical side. I mean, practicality is my favorite thing in character wardrobes, but if it's more of like a fantasy, then I'm okay with like seeing it get a little more weird. And I'm going to talk about that with steampunk and why steampunk bothers me. But it definitely elevates it from something as simple as this little L with a ball in the corner of it. Like this could be anything, but this is definitely very specific. So I guess, you know what, I'm gonna just walk into the 5th one. Practicality. I said that like a voiceover on Google, like how to pronounce things. Practicality. So what does that mean, and why does this relate to steampunk? So steampunk is something that a lot of people assume I really enjoy. And it's an aesthetic that it's texture heavy. It's something more grimy. It has a lot of leather and seams and gears and things that are, definitely down my alley. The thing that bothers me is I really do like steampunk. I love steampunk. But 90% of steampunk is so wrong. It's so wrong. Because steampunk is all about practical. And it's based on steam and being, what's the word? Having ingenuity? Is that the right word? I think that's the right word I'm looking for. Or it's like being clever with the way that you're building things. So it's gluing a bunch of gears that don't even touch on a top hat, I'm not a big fan of. But if the top hat actually had like the gears spinning and that spinning was rotating like a clock that was on the front of it, and it needed a solar panel, something on the very top that actually winds the gears and that works the clock. All of a sudden, I have a deeper respect because there was extra thought put into it. And I think just sticking a bunch of things that are associated with a theme or a genre, and then just like throwing them in on a costume without any sense of why or where. Yeah, it kind of bothers me. Maybe it doesn't bother you guys as much, but it bothers me because I feel like there wasn't thought. And my favorite designs with characters are when they feel well thought out, or where they feel flushed out, or fleshed out, not flushed out. That makes it sound like you're putting them in the toilet. Just flush them out. But when they feel fleshed out, there's more thought put into it. All of a sudden, new ideas start springing up of, oh, like, why is there a clock there? Or like, why are there gears? Oh, that they're turning. Is that winding something up? And then if you see the clock, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then if you see like the wires going to the top of the hat, you can see that the top of the hat has like a metallic finish. Like, oh, it's solar panels. So that like they all work together. So there's a train of thought that's there that I feel like sometimes is absent, especially with steampunk. And I think the same goes for when I see a lot of people draw characters that have weapons, or they have something that is supposed to be functional, and you can't just plop something on the character and think that the viewer is just going to believe it. You have to treat the viewer with respect and not treat them like they're dumb. And I think this comes with movies too. My favorite movie reviewer always talks about how his favorite movies don't treat the audience like they're dumb. And I think a lot of that has to come down to you as the artist, or you as the creator, making something that feels believable and that feels like you put a lot of thought into making sure it feels right. And that's something that it's very easy to do. So like, let's say you have a weapon that is like the Assassin's Creed one. Actually, you know what? This is a good example. The Assassin's Creed weapon with the knife that has I'm pretty sure it's steam powered, or not steam powered. It's like a switchblade where it like pops up, and it's a mechanism that it just shoots up like what are those knives? A switchblade? I don't know. I'm not good with blade names. But essentially, when you see the design in if you've ever seen the concept art of it, it feels not only practical, but functional. And it feels like there was a lot of thought into it's spring-loaded. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So when they break it down, it actually feels like it makes sense. And people that don't know a lot about knives like myself, it feels right. But then people like my old roommate who, he's had knives all of his life. One of my friends, he lives in Kansas City. He makes knives for a living. And someone like him would have a deeper understanding of how the spring-loaded knife works. And if he can look at it and be like, yeah, that makes sense. That looks functional and that looks accurate. Then all of a sudden there's a deeper respect for the creator because they put that extra time. It's kind of like when someone draws an animal, but they don't know anything about the animal or the animal's anatomy, and they just kind of wing it and it looks really off. But if they took the time to do their research on what the animal's anatomy was, what are the proportions, and then they drew it, it's like night and day in my opinion. So I'm going to put practicality under that one. Okay. Number 6. Oh yeah, let me answer some questions here. Caroline says, teacher's pet. I'm actually taking written notes just like class. Are you really? Oh my gosh, that's funny. I always think it's pretty funny when people like tag me on Instagram of like notes that they take on the stream. I think that's great. Brand says, a bit off track, but how is meeting Bobby Chu? Should we expect to see you get interviewed by him soon? No, I do want to work with him eventually, but not anytime soon. But he was great. Litzy says, I like the rambling. I'm drawing while watching and listening to you. Hey, perfect. Yeah, for those of you who are new to the stream, that's kind of what I want you guys to be doing. So not just listening blankly. I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. I guess I watch streams differently. Usually I watch streams while drawing, and I'll just have my headphones on and I'll listen to what they're saying. But I'm hoping to like motivate you guys to also draw. Bunco says, hey Tim, any tips on how to have nice lines on paper or digital? Mine are all jaggedy. You know what? Thank you, Stigmox, for following. My number one piece of advice is don't do chicken scratch lines. My teacher was really against this in high school because, like, let's say I want to do a circle right now. Chicken scratching would be where you kind of do this. Actually, that wasn't that bad of a circle, but the difference between chicken scratching, where your lines, you know what, let me like overemphasize what chicken scratching usually looks like that, versus something like this, is it means it lacks confidence. And I'm not here to like devalue your work or how you work. I chicken scratch all the time, especially in high school. I kind of learned not to in college, but every now and then I find myself, well, no, I guess I really don't anymore, because I think I'm more confident in more of a loose line and allowing my mistakes to become part of the actual finished piece. So how do you stop doing this? I would just say try being more fluid. Work a little faster for underdrawings. I feel like chicken scratching is when you don't have an underdrawing and you're trying to, like if I was doing a hand, if I was like chicken scratching it, it'd be something like this, which actually isn't terrible. I feel like chicken scratching gets a bad name, but I think it's a lot of the times because it's a lack of confidence. So when you're doing like a hand, when I do it now, I try to do more of like a Cynics approach, where, and Cynics is an artist that I really love and respect on YouTube, but he's more fluid and loose with his line work, and he allows, like, this line is not a mistake. He kind of plays with it and he like works it into the actual piece. So I think you got to allow yourself to have some more fun. And I think chicken scratching sometimes is like a safety precaution. Let's see here. Lopa says, I studied a little bit of dressmaking. That kind of stitching is called top stitching, and it's a great detail. I love it when artists add these details clothes, makes them so much more realistic. I did not know that. See, now I'm learning something. I'm going to write that down, actually, top stitching. Yeah, it's like any little detail that you can pull in that may not be common knowledge, but if you do a little research on it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's really cool, and I can add it into all my pieces from this point forward. And that's how I felt about rendering different materials differently. Now that once I've kind of figured that out, I was like, what? Why haven't I been doing this all along? So I'm hoping some of these click with you guys too. Feardo says, your art is so amazing. I'm glad you do streams like this. Thank you. I feel like with CG Cookie, a part of me, where did that come from? Oh, thank you, Janush H, for following. A part of me really loves teaching. I feel like, I don't know at home, but I feel very comfortable talking about like what I've learned, and hopefully it helps other people, because I think like making those connections with people are very important. Brand says, how do you find a nice balance between that and impersonalism? Do you mean impressionism? Hold on. I might have to Google this because I'm not sure what that word means. I think you mean impressionism. Let me know if that's what you meant, and then I'll answer that. Haute couture. Yep. You got it, Nico. Or wait, Nico. Sorry. Fear Dude says, what would you recommend when drawing on paper, using a reference on a desktop screen or on a phone right beside your paper? I use both. I think whatever works best for you. I know that's kind of a lame answer, but there are times where I'll have my laptop with me when I'm drawing, and then there are times where I have my phone in my hand while I'm drawing in my bed. So I don't know. I feel like it's whatever works best for you. I know Justin Gerard, if you guys know him, or Annie Stagg Gerard, they actually print out reference images and put it on their, they work with oil painting, so they actually tape it on the sides of their, whatever that board is that they put their canvas on. And I think that's really smart. I actually might do that for some of my larger drawings. Sketchio says, wish I had the same attention for my studies. I know how that feels sometimes. Litzy says, I feel like this translates into everything ever. I also hate when crafters create steampunk themed things that are just a bunch of gears hot glued to a headband. I'm right there with you. Howard Artist, or Chris, says, I just watched a video about world building yesterday, and I can definitely agree with treating the viewer like they're not dumb. Yeah, like bring them into your world, like get them as involved and as knowledgeable as you are, and all of a sudden they feel like it's a treat, like it's a reward looking at your art or getting to know your characters or the world that you're creating. Those are the kind of worlds I really get into. I think that's why blockbuster movies, I do not enjoy going to them anymore, because I feel like they treat me like I'm 10, and that they really have to like zone in on parts of the movie of like, oh, did you catch that? Like this has significance, or oh no, you'll have to know this for later, or did you miss that? Okay, we're gonna give you a flashback as a reminder in case you missed it the first or second time. It's like, I don't need that, and I don't want to be treated like I'm dumb. And I think that the more that you treat your audience with a higher respect, the more that you'll get a response from that. In my opinion, I guess this is all very opinion based. Volpic says, I super always take notes from these. Oh, that's awesome too. Thank you. I would love to see them. If you guys could put them in the Discord channel, there's a link below. Just put them in the weekly Wednesday stream part. I personally love seeing them because I like seeing like what were the important like bullet points that you took away from it. Tovlia says, well, I've made more notes than I do at my class. Also, I've finished drawing the button when you moved it with it. Oh, yeah, the button. Yeah. Buttons are fun to draw. And I feel like drawing oversized buttons are kind of like a fun thing for me to do. So if someone's wearing a winter jacket, I'll like purposely find a place to put oversized buttons just because I think they're fun. Okay, we'll do two more really quick. LED says, can you spell the name of the artist you just mentioned while talking about the hand? Yes. Cynics. And you know what? I'll also put it in the chat here. He also does streams on here. He's one of my favorite artists in terms of teaching because he really has a different way of teaching where it's not super like fundamental of here's the anatomy of a hand, here's the proper proportions from left side. None of that. He kind of skips it into let's have fun with shape design and breaking it down into simple shapes and then kind of creating literally anything, not even just a hand, but anything out of simple shapes. So yeah, he's great. All right, last one. Brand says, yeah, that's what I meant. And I was talking about your fourth point. Oh yeah. So when do you know that you're pushing realism too far? If you feel like you pushed it to a point where it's not your style anymore, or you don't feel comfortable doing it, then maybe take a step back. Because I want to respect people's styles or brands or whatever it might be, but I'm just giving you guys some tips on what I've seen really work for my own art and for others when they kind of started implementing some of this stuff. So take it as you will. I love Impressionism and I love Surrealism to an extent. And I kind of understand why I like Dali and some of those artists that were really classically trained kind of moved away from that realism boat and took more of a surrealistic approach to things because realism can get boring, let's be honest. And I think that's why even I like playing with negative space or contrast or things that kind of have a root in realism, but I'm like playing with it. You know, I'm like taking my my foundation with realism, but I'm applying kind of a style on top of it. So yeah, I think you'll find that line and then you'll be able to make those decisions. Okay, moving on to another one here. Let's see what I wrote down. Anomalies. Yes. This one is super, super important. And I actually think this is probably one of the most important ones on the list. So what's an anomaly? Anomaly, I mean, by definition, it's like something that's different than what's standard or the status quo. But when it comes to art, the biggest difference would be like, all right, let me draw. Can you guys see this? So this is number 6. Well, I thank you, Just Jay, for following. Okay. So like, let's say we had an apple. This would be like the surface level thinking of what an apple is. But then if I were to take more of an anomaly approach to an apple, like maybe it's bruised over here. Maybe the stem is like too long, like it got broken off at a weird part. I almost want there to be like a leaf. Let's say there were 2 leaves instead of 1. Maybe had like a really deep kind of crater. Had a bit more of the dots on the top. So what I'm assuming you guys are kind of already getting the point of what I'm trying to say here. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're like, why is he drawing this weird looking apple? So when you're drawing something, and I'm talking about anything, but I think I'm going to use fruit and vegetables as my example because I think it's a little easier to clarify what I'm talking about, is this type of an apple is far more interesting than this one. This is like cookie cutter, what you would expect an apple to look like. This one's a little different. It has some other aspects of it. You're like, well, that's kind of an interesting take on an apple. Or even like, let's say we did an onion. Like, this would be boring onion. A more exciting looking onion might be one where it's like flaking. Wait, let me. Maybe some of these root things are a little longer. There's like some dirt on it still. And mind you, I'm kind of imagining if this was like fully rendered out rather than it just being like a quick sketch. But I can promise you time and time again, this will be far more interesting than this. And that's because these are something that the viewer is used to. It's something that they've seen a million times. But when you kind of make it slightly different or a little more bizarre, or even a lot of the times it's just closer to actual life, because who actually sees an apple like this in life? Come on. When you create something that feels more realistic or more tangible, it elevates the drawing. And the way that I look at it, or you know what? Another good example would be like a banana. So I think, and mind you, I'm doing these all from memory. So if they're like a little off, give me some credit here. So like this would be banana. But then when you look at like a real banana, why thank you, JP Gamer PT, for following. Like the tops of bananas are always far more interesting than I think we give them credit for. Like there's usually some strings. Like if I do like a macro look at the top of a banana, like where you break it off from the tree, or I guess they're not actually trees, are they? They're more of a bush. I forgot that whole thing of like banana trees. They're not actually trees, whatever. If you do like a macro look at it, it almost looks like horns to me. Like the one that I have on YouTube right now, it's a time lapse. It's a 30-minute warm up. The top of it was actually inspired from the top of a banana, and it looked just like a demon's horns to me or something. Let's see, I'm trying to look. I just saw some bananas in my kitchen. And I'm like, oh yeah, they have some bruises on them. Yeah, some of them have that brown spot to it. This one actually has part of the old banana root on it still. Oops, you guys can't even see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. So all of a sudden, this one becomes far more interesting. And that could be said about all of them. And anomalies obviously don't just have to apply to fruit and vegetables. So when you're drawing a character, I'm gonna quickly like go through all the different types of anomalies just as examples, because there's literally hundreds of thousands of millions. But if we're talking about like a character, let's say on their arm, rather than just drawing a perfect arm, let's see if I have any good arms I can draw on top of. Well, I thank you for following. Who was that? Siren. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's probably way off. I'm sorry. Okay. So if I was drawing an arm, let's make sure you guys can see it. I imagine like this is the elbow. This is the worst arm I've ever drawn. Okay, so like this would be arm. And oh god, this is so out of proportion. I'm sorry. But the point I'm trying to make is rather than just having it be like called done, maybe he's got some freckles on him. Maybe there's a scratch from when he fell off of a swing when he was younger. Maybe he recently fell off a swing and there's a band-aid because it was kind of a deep wound and he doesn't want to get it infected. Maybe he was left out in the sun too long as a kid and didn't wear sunblock, so he's got a bunch of these freckles on his shoulder. Maybe he has more of a lean muscle type look to him, so you can kind of see the muscles underneath the skin on the lower part of the arm and on the upper part. Yeah, because maybe he's like a free runner and he doesn't have a lot of mass on him. So what you do see on him are kind of that underlying muscle structures. So all of a sudden that arm went from being a basic looking arm into something a little more interesting. There's story behind it. And I think this becomes more of an anomaly because this isn't what's expected. I mean, yeah, I'm assuming some of you are like, well, yeah, but you got to throw on some details. But I mean, maybe then you take it further. You know, I know some artists then go more into like the surrealistic point. I feel like we're still in realism. I'm going to keep it in that realm for now because I feel like it's a lot easier to have anomalies in surrealistic stuff. But since most of us do things that are kind of rooted in reality, let's keep it there. So another example would be, I'm looking at the wonderful radish spirit in front of me, but like a radish, why thank you, Buggles, for following. Or even, oh, you know what a good example is? A carrot. I should have done this one to start off with. Okay, so this would be your basic carrot. If we wanted to turn that from basic carrot into like more of a interesting looking anomaly looking carrot, all of a sudden we're drawing the ridges that go down the carrot. We're drawing, sometimes they have like these really long extended stems on the end. Maybe the part where I want to call it foliage, but where the green part comes out, you know, I'm going to lift this a bit. Maybe it's slightly crooked. Why, thank you, prov_art, for following. And if you actually look at a carrot when you pull it out, it has a lot of the green on top. I think a lot of us associate it with like a short stem, but there's actually a lot because this is where the carrot gets its nutrients, or where it gets the sunlight from, because this is the part that's above ground, where the carrot is a root vegetable, so it grows underground. So, and even doing that double seaming that we did on the clothing, I do that on carrots. I do that on things that I feel would benefit from having that kind of valley texture to it. So you can see I created two lines and I just shaded up and I shaded down on either side. Maybe there's some dirt. There might be like a speckle on it. And yeah, I know a lot of people have told me, well, doesn't that just make the carrot more ugly? And I'm like, man, things that are more relatable or things that are more tangible tend to have a less pretty quality about them. Why, thank you, Red Strink and Frutal Strudel, I think that said, for following. And this carrot to me has so much more character than this basic carrot. Like, this is something I would see, would blink, I would look away, would never think about again. Where this carrot, if I like added a lot more detail, like there might be, let's say, like a little ladybug on it, just kind of chilling for whatever reason. All of a sudden, this carrot becomes far more interesting and something that leaves more of an impression with the viewer, because then they can look at it and actually look around and see all the little details and kind of create their own stories of the carrot. And like literally this, like what's more mundane than a carrot, you know? But we're turning it into something that is interesting. And I think that's why I kind of challenge ours to look at something that is uninteresting and turn it into something interesting. Well, I thank you, Fruitless Endeavor, for following. That sounds like such a sad username, but thank you. So I think this is a good example of going from uninteresting to interesting. So anomalies are really big for me, and I think that's something that we should all practice on. I even think I need to practice on it more. I feel like I get stuck drawing kind of the same face all the time. And a good example, well, actually I won't draw it out because I'll move on. But a good example would be like drawing like a really pretty girl face versus like a really old wizard warrior type face that it has like super deep hooded bags under his eyes, and maybe there's like a deep scarring that he got imprinted on his neck that goes down into like this big cape that's covering these super bony collarbones. Like things like that are just far more interesting in my opinion. Thank you, Jay Wolf, for following. Okay, let me answer some questions and we'll keep moving on with our list that we got going here. Lopa says, I feel a weird affection for the wonky apple. Yeah, right? Like these are just more interesting to look at than the basic ones here. Yes, Shrek does have layers. And like think of onion being like stripped away of the layers and how much more interesting that would look like than just an onion all perfectly intact with like no ripping or no flaking at all. Like that's just not interesting to look at. Haley says, hey, this is a bit off topic. Sorry, I just got accepted to Salt Lake Comic-Con last week, and I was wondering what printer and paper you use to make your prints. You said last stream that you could make them for just over $1 a piece, so I'm curious to know what you use. Well, I thank you, Junio Vlakvisky, I think it says, for following. I use a Canon Pro 100 with premium matte paper, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit. And congrats on making the Salt Lake. I will be there as well, so we'll see you in the fall, I think it is. Red Panda says, how do you learn to control the thickness of your lines? I love the slight variation in your sketches. When I try to add it into my sketches, it doesn't look natural. I think intuition. I think I've drawn so much. I know where I want a deeper line versus a lighter line. The way that I typically think about it, if I had to dissect it, would be wherever there's more of like wrinkles or intersection, or like if I know the elbow is going to bend a lot, so I add more of a shading to it. But then on this part of the arm, or on like the bicep part, I'm going to keep it lighter, a little more thin, because to me there's not a lot of weight going on there. But then like on the carrot, I'll probably have way more weight and more. Man, there's a lot of people following today. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ralna, for following. And all we're drawing are how to turn vegetables from clean looking to dirty looking. So thank you guys for following. So I think it's just a confidence thing. And it took me a while to feel. Thank you, Raina. Oh, I think I got that one for following. And I think it just took me a while to be comfortable with like letting my mistakes be included in my drawing and no longer seeing them as mistakes. So if I do like cross hatching, or if I do lines that I'm not super proud of right away, I'll work them in. And if I really don't like them, I'll use my eraser and I'll lift them up. Oftentimes though, I try to include things and I'll try to work them in the way that heightens or elevates the drawing. If I really feel like it took away from the drawing, or if it was too much, just lift it off. I mean, that's what the beauty of traditional graphite stuff is you can erase it. And like, I know there's a lot of benefits to working with pen and things that are more permanent, and that can definitely raise your confidence quicker. But I feel you can do the same with pencils, but I do think it might take a little longer. Let's see here. Two more. We got Spectre4 says, so in this case on anomalies, how do you practice this? As my teacher says, keep drawing from life and draw realistically. And this anomalies is like based on reality, but not a pure observation study. Yeah, actually, this is a good in between. So I'm not like looking at a carrot and drawing it verbatim or as I see it exactly. But I know what a carrot looks like because I eat them like 3 times a day. And I know what the stereotypical carrot looks like, and I know what carrot I usually eat looks like. And Maybe this is a good challenge for you guys, actually. Maybe, you know what? This might be a challenge on our Discord. This might be April's challenge. I think I'm going to take like 5 to 10 fruit and vegetable. I'm going to give you like the basic look of what it might, or what, is assumed it looks like. Oh, thank you, October following, or October forever for following. And then I challenge you guys to draw anomalies of those fruit and vegetables. Because oftentimes I think we lean towards something like this, when in reality we're shooting for something like this. So I specifically work pretty much everything I do in a way that has more of a anomaly look, or at least I attempt. I shouldn't say like every time I do it, I get exactly what I aim for. But I know with something like this, or even with like, if I draw a jacket, I'm not going to draw a super clean, fine pressed jacket that looked like it was just bought off the rack. No, I'm going to draw a jacket that looks like it's seen days in the dust storm outside, and it's taken a few punches, and it's gotten oil spilled on it. And everything that you can add to your subject matter, whatever it might be, that will add character to it, I implore you to do that. And like these fruit and vegetables are like a good small scale example of that. Man, thank you guys. This has been a really active stream. Thank you. Thank you, Alyssa Marie Tart, for following. And I think you guys should maybe challenge yourself to try this sometime. Okay, and the last question we had before we move on to the next would be, just here for Hug says, I was really excited to see you at Emerald City again this year. Thanks for being there. Hey, well, thank you for seeing me again. Okay, that wasn't a question though. Addison says, I'm actually practicing cross-hatching right now. Do you use that type of shading a lot? Kind of. So when I am shading, let me do that really quick. Oop. So when I'm shading, I do 2 types of shading techniques. I'll do it on these circles up here. So I do kind of this type where I'll do lines and then I'll cross them backwards. This is if I'm like trying to do a large area quickly. I'll do like cross hatching lines. And then where I know I want the darker value, I'll start pushing down a little harder. You can see how that starts to build up. But then I get into my second type of rendering style, which are small circles. I tell people this all the time, and a lot of people don't believe me, but yeah, my rendering style is like 80% small circles. That's all it is. I think it has to do, I think digital art actually trained me to draw traditionally like this, because I would always work with a skin brush or a chalk brush, and to get that smoother shading or that gradient that has more of a natural transition, I would have to work in a way where the edge of the brush was constantly intersecting with itself. So I think that carried over into my traditional, and you can kind of see how that looks. I know I can't really zoom in on it, but you can see from far away how we got that nice clean transition pretty quickly. And that's how I get literally all my details. It's like something that's, I'm not trying to keep a secret, but every time I tell people, they don't believe me or they don't like doing it themselves. But yeah, most of my rendering is small circles. And then when I do cross hatching, it's usually for like larger areas. Like if I was to render this boot out, I'll like start with cross hatching, and then eventually it kind of turns into small circles when I want to get more detailed. So yeah, that's how I render everything. Okay, moving on to the next one. Let's see what I wrote down here. Oh, patterns. Okay, this one, I don't think I really need to do an example drawing, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Let's say you had a giant piece of fabric. Here I go drawing it. You know what's funny is hearing myself be like, oh, I don't need to do an example for it, and then literally 10 seconds later contradict myself and start drawing something. So like, let's say this was a cloth on the side of someone. Well, I thank you, Wealthy Owl, for following. Man, I thought that said Wealthy Cow for a second. Wealthy Wow for following. So instead of just leaving the dress, or you know what, we can make it a full dress. Like let's say her feet came out here. And there's her little shoes. All right, like let's say this is a dress. Instead of just keeping it, super simple dress, instead, let's add kind of this slightly ornate pattern on the bottom. And you see this in fantasy art all the time. And especially in like old Renaissance paintings, you see kind of that filigree pattern and very intricate, kind of wealthy, ornate look to stuff. And obviously I'm going very quickly, and if I was really trying to get a more suitable pattern that people were going to like dissect and look into, I would give it a little more effort. Well, thank you, FF Leroux, for following. But you can see how all of a sudden this dress just became a lot more interesting because I added this pattern on the bottom of it. And then let's say I almost want to do, hold on, let me do kind of the same dress really quick. So this would be one example of a pattern. Let's do another one. Let's do, actually, if we went all the way up, mind you, I'm working very quickly, so please don't dog me on the inaccuracies. And I do not want the lines matching up from wrinkle to wrinkle because there's going to be a little bit of an offset. It won't be perfect. Well, I thank you, Test CZ, for following. Okay, so then the legs coming out. So then this would be another example of a pattern dress. This gives off a different impression than the first one. The first one gives more of a ornate, fancy, almost like Yuna from Final Fantasy X. Where the second one has very like school goer. I don't want to say school teacher, but it has kind of this ugly plaid look to it. And I think this is something to note the difference between the two, even though the shapes that we have underneath are the exact same. So adding patterns to your work can elevate it very quickly. Let me see if I have any on me. I guess it's not a drawing example, but you can see even with this dress that I have from Emma Stone, you can see all this intricate pattern work, and it elevates it where if it didn't have that texture on it, it would just be a simple form-fitting dress. It'd be a very basic looking dress. And actually, the reason I even have this behind me, if any of you guys have seen this behind me, the reason I like it is I like the quote that she said when she won the Oscar is, "I still have a lot of growing and learning in this and work to do. And this guy is a really beautiful symbol to continue on that journey. I'm so grateful for that." And I like the idea of no matter how far you get in your art career, it's good to celebrate little victories, but to also recognize that there's more that can be done. So I keep this behind me as a reminder that, yeah, things might be going well on Instagram or even with convention life or being an independent artist, and hopefully I can keep that as a successful career path for myself, but to never get comfortable, to never get complacent. So I like having that behind me. But anyways, that's patterns. All right, let's move on to the next one. How much time do I got? Okay, like 25 minutes. Or what? No, like 35. All right, the next one is, oh, translucency. I'm going to grab the drawing that I just finished really quick. Hold on, be right back. Whew. As I went downstairs, I found a bunch of my prints that I could use as examples here. Okay, so what's translucency? So this is a drawing that I did on the airplane back from Emerald City, and I cleaned it up a little bit yesterday. But translucency is when you can see through an object and you can see kind of what's underneath. So whenever I do these kind of bird mask skull things, I try to have the front of it be made of like glass or plastic or something that's see-through and translucent. And my my mom, I think, gets the most impressed by this. She's like, "Man, you made it look see-through." But really, all I'm doing is I'm kind of drawing the drawing that I normally would. I take a kneaded eraser and I just lift on the part that's underneath the glass. It's like the easiest little trick to make something look see-through, but it really does impress people. And I don't know if that's a trick, but I feel like it's something that I didn't think was that impressive, but I hear a lot of people be like, wow, that really elevates it. Or let me see if there's a drawing. There was one that I did for last year's Drawtober. Let me pull it up really quick. Or I'm sorry, it was for Drawloween. And it was basically a man holding a ghost. And you could see the man through the ghost. And I had a lot of people being like, wow, how did you do that? All right, you can kind of see it here. But really, like, let's take a really close look at like this pant leg. You can see all I did. Why, thank you, Zatter Hovadolo. Oh my gosh, I butchered that. I'm sorry. But thank you for following. But you can see all I did here was I made the ghost very light. I made it like a super light value. I didn't even touch the paper texture. The area around it, I made a little darker. So the contrast really lifts him up. And then wherever he would intersect with the man, essentially I drew the man how I normally would, and I used my kneaded eraser and I picked up some of that value. Why, thank you, Oniri Octopus and Zetter Valdo. Oh my gosh, I'm doing really bad with names today, but thank you guys. And I took the eraser and I just lifted some of the value in that graphite up, and it gave that impression that you can see through it. And some of seeing through him blurred your vision on seeing all the way through. And that's why the man isn't completely as dark as he is on either side. It was Ornery Octopus. There we go. So that's my big tip with translucency. I feel like it's really not that difficult of a drawing technique to introduce to your work, but it seems to impress people. And I'm not saying that you should just do art that impresses people, but I think it's a tool that you should have at your disposal because it's fun. I honestly like working with translucency or things that are see-through, and I almost just encourage you to try it. Well, I thank you, Squirrel Hurl, for following. Man, this is one of the most active streams I've had in a while, so thank you guys. You know what? Let me pick up some questions really quick, and then I'll keep moving on. I know I'm moving kind of fast, but I want to make sure I get as many of these as possible. Spectre 4 says, thank you, and you got my Nickwell in first try. I think you mean your nickname? I don't know what you're trying to say there. Alyssa Marie Tart says, haha, it's Alyssa Marie T Art, but that's okay. You're welcome. Okay. Alyssa Marie. I'll remember that. Hey, Faith, how are you doing? Faith says, where is Price? He is in Salt Lake, but he will be with me next week. Probably by the time you read this, Sean will be back. Nope. No, he's gone. Yeah. Oh, you were sick. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't see you. Sketchio says, almost forgot. Did you watch the Oscars? Any thoughts? For those of you who don't know, I feel like film reviews and film in general is like my second passion, my second love. Well, thank you, Vishen, for following. And of course I watched the Oscars. They're like my favorite thing on TV every year. I had to record them though, and I had to wait until I got back. So I avoided social media like the plague, and I couldn't even really look at my phone much because I didn't want any spoilers. But yeah, I thought they were really good. I thought most of the films that won deserved it. Shape of Water winning Best Picture. Yeah, I thought it was a good film. I don't know if I would have said it was the best picture of the year, but I'm glad. I think having movies that are weird and different be more recognized, and I think Del Toro deserved it for Pan's Labyrinth. So it's almost like give or take. I really liked the other movies. I really liked Three Billboards, Florida Project, Call Me by Your Name. Like all the ones that were front runners, I did enjoy a lot. So Yeah, I enjoyed the Oscars a lot, and I love movies. I love movies. Anyways, okay. And remember, if any of you guys have questions, please put vonnart before it. That way, when I'm looking between the drawing and the questions, I can get them really quick. So as I went downstairs and I was looking at all my art, another thing that I had was this drawing where it was like, I gotta kind of hold it sideways, but it was a woodland youth. And I draw this character every June. And last year I want to do a little bigger because it's kind of to commemorate me being, or turning into a full vegan, blah, 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 blah. But anyways, the reason that I pulled this picture up is because in the background, all these leaves, you can tell I hand drew every single leaf. And this was an interesting piece for me because I felt like it actually took away from the overall composition. I was so focused on just rendering everything realistically that I didn't pull back and look at it as a whole and really see if the values are working with one another. So my advice with this would be, if you're going to render everything out, make sure it's still working as a composition and the values work together. And you can see how I'm still like cheating realism. The staff was really dark here, so the leaves behind it I made a little lighter. Well, I thank you, Hi Zephyr Fox, for following. So that's one way to kind of play with realism. I kind of do the same with hands. I make hands a little darker so that everything around them might be a little lighter. It gives that cool contrast. And then another one of the drawings that I found that I feel is a good example of elevating your work quickly without having to do much work is this was my Miss Chantress piece that I did a couple years ago. And the reason that I really like this one is because, I mean, it just holds significance for me. But this mask, it's not that it was difficult, or this headpiece, I should say. It's just that I took a lot of time to render little details. So yeah, the front part here took me like a good 3 hours, but it was worth it. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't something where I'm like excruciating pain trying to figure out how to render something. It was just creating intricate, ornate shapes that worked together as a whole. I mean, I was watching horror movies. It was Halloween month at the time. It was October. So, you know, I was just watching things on the background, but I was just taking my time, making sure that every little part felt like it worked as a whole. And I think this goes into my next point. 9 is patience. This, I feel like, is just as important as our number 6 with anomalies. If you have patience, I feel like your art immediately will just be elevated over time because you're willing to put in the extra work, the little effort that a lot of people are not willing to make. And I think that's why I've kind of been able to, I don't want to say, how do I word this? I feel like I've been able to get further on like social media and stuff because of those extra little details people like to see. They pay attention to them because a lot of times artists try to create quick things that are easy to digest. And I kind of like to create things that allow the viewer to really look inside of the drawing and explore it themselves. Well, thank you, PDalk1, for following. And I really do encourage you guys to do the same, where you're creating drawings that, even if they're more simple, like even with the carrot, I mean, look how much more interesting this carrot is compared to our basic carrot. Man, you guys are awesome today. Thank you guys for following. And when I am drawing, I try to give more than just the first pass, just the surface level viewing of looking at it. And even with this drawing, yeah, this helmet, you instantly kind of get like it's a fantasy, high concept, fashion, whatever you might kind of label it as right away. But then for those that really want to take the time to look at it and like look at every horn or look at the little intricacies or the birds on her shoulder, or even like, thank you, MC Listen, for following. Or I'll have to read that again. Or even like, most people don't know this, but her body actually falls through this. And this is actually her butt. But a lot of people don't know that because it's kind of like hidden behind all this cloth and stuff. Or even like this is her arm. I mean, I guess that's more of a small one. But it's those little details. Even the back of her staff. It was Multison. Thank you, Multison, for following. You can see how I wrapped the bottom of the staff here. And yeah, that took like an extra 3 to 5 minutes just to do these lines, but it's worth it. Otherwise that staff wouldn't have that string on it, and I feel like it wouldn't be as intricate. It wouldn't be as interesting. And this kind of leads into my 10th tip, but I kind of want to first talk about patience a little longer. No, I don't know if I want to get into this one yet. Never mind. We'll go into the 10th tip. So patience is really important. Take your time with your work. I know this is something where this is definitely more opinion based. I know a lot of artists that they work very quickly, and for them, being patient or investing a lot of time into their art isn't their goal, isn't their end result. I've just seen this work really well in my own work and in my own career path and in my own, I guess, social media following. So I'm giving you this advice as my own personal piece of advice, but don't take it as fact or as like you have to be patient to be a good artist. I've just seen it work very well for me. Okay, moving on to number 10, which is kind of what I wanted to show you with this Mischantress one, or even with this piece that I did, which is the red backstory number 1. There's a rope and there's twine tied around this pole, and there's a knot that's on it, but knots. This mostly relates to anything with like a string or twine or rope, anything that can be tied in a knot. Don't just do this, or if it's sagging, don't do like a perfect knot like that. There are so many interesting looking knots online, and if you just like Google search interesting knot or weird knot, you're gonna get some really cool looking ones and ones that you've never heard of before or seen before. And if you include those very weird looking knots in your drawings rather than just like the basic shoe tie one, it really takes it to a cool place. It almost takes it to like this fantastical, mystical place because of how often we don't see other knots besides these two. Why, thank you, Starfishy, for following. And I wish I had more examples behind me of different knots that I've included in my art. But a lot of it just has to come down to searching for cool looking knots, making sure it feels practical in whatever you're including it in, and then including it. I think the easiest way to vary it up is having the loops. Why, thank you for whoever just followed. I missed you though, but thank you. Having the loops be different sizes, so one side longer than the other. I feel like this is just an obvious one. Oh, there it was. Rodrigo Kiwi for following. Thank you. Having one side that's longer than the other. Hey, thank you, Zetter Hovadoi. Oh man, I am so sorry for mispronouncing your name. If there's something else you want me to call you, let me know, and I'll write it on the list on the side here. But thank you. Try doing this. I feel like having, what's that called? Asymmetrical knots, just elevate. Ooh, wow, that got a good heart smash there. And just avoiding just the basic loop knot. Try something where, they're like going around. I mean, you see this with like some ornate looking design or ornamentation in fashion. But all of a sudden, let's say it got like bigger. Same with this side. All of a sudden, let's imagine like that was someone's belt, like that was their loop. Like, look how much more intricate and interesting this type of a knot is compared to your shoelace knot. And obviously, it should fit the character. Like, I don't think this would work on a... What's a good example off the top of my head? Like a Norse Mad Max type character, if that's a good representation. I mean, maybe that would be cool to see someone in their genre have this kind of a knot. You know what? Actually, no. Yeah, I won't say limitations. I think anyone could have this knot. If you can make it work, I think it would be really cool. So knots would be my next one. Okay, where's my list? And for those of you who are wondering, don't worry, we're almost through them. Because I feel like I've been rambling a lot. Number 11, the 70-30 rule. This is something that I actually talked to an artist over the weekend, and they talk about how in their art, I asked them like how are they able to work so fast. He was a comic book artist, and he says he follows the 70-30 rule. And basically what that means is, let's say you have a drawing. And imagine this is just like a texture square that we're working on. Rather than have the texture square, oh, you know what? I can do it back and forth. So the bottom one's gonna be our 70-30, and then the top one's just gonna be mundane throughout. So there's nothing gonna be interesting. It's like, let's say I was doing a wood texture and it looked the same everywhere. Now, mind you, I'm doing a texture square, but this knowledge could be applied to anything. So all of a sudden, okay, yeah, you can kind of tell that's, not the best texture square of wood, but you kind of get what I'm saying there. But now let's say this one, we have like that, the knot, or whatever you want to call it, on the wood that sometimes you see. Maybe there's a new one that's forming down here. But definitely more of the focus is over here. Okay, let me zoom in. Oh, I'm kind of bummed that my autofocus isn't working anymore, or my manual focus. But even though it's kind of blurry, you can kind of tell this pretty much is consistent and boring throughout. The bottom one, there's a little more interest. There's a little more intriguing because 70% of it is like this empty space, which is like pretty much all this. And then the 30% has those intriguing shapes and something that is different and something that will draw the viewer in. So why does that apply to everything? Okay, well, let's say a character is wearing, let's imagine like a kingly type character, and he has a fur coat. If most of the fur coat, I know this kind of looks like ice cream that's been tipped over and melted on the ground, but stay with me here. Thank you, Anna Lowell, for following. If he has this like intricate, cool pattern going up the back of his robe, and imagine it's like all ornate and has the details and ornamentation and filigree going all up it. If I only fill that cape up like 30% of the way with the kind of like intricate part, and then I leave the remaining 70% just blank and vacant, the cape becomes so much more interesting than if I pulled that detail all the way up. It'd be more impressive on a technical level, but on an interest, like on a composition level, it actually lessens it. And I think that's something very important because that 70-30 rule then can be applied to anything. And even with clothing, like we were talking about earlier, if you can see how intricate kind of this part is, this would be the 30% where you're adding a lot of details, a lot of focus. The remainder part of the jacket can be more simple. Maybe there's a couple wrinkles, but the details are really on the edge. And that's where you want kind of the focus on. And my boss at CG Cookie, Wes, great guy. I learned a lot from him. And one of the best tips of advice he told me was to give things breathing room. And oftentimes my art, it's so intricate and detailed to a fault, actually, where he was saying, give it some space to breathe. And when the viewer is looking at something, they don't want it to be exhausting to look throughout your art. I mean, I think more details are better, but I think placing them is equally as important as being patient enough to detail it. So when you're going through, and I guess I kind of did that with the dress here, the same thing that I did with the cape, where 30% of it's really intricate and you can have the viewer like look through it with their eyes and explore it. But then for breathing room, let the other 70% just be simple. So something to think about. And remember, I also like over complicated designs, like Cloud from Kingdom Hearts. I think it's like so over the top and ridiculous. I actually kind of love it. But that's a good example of like having too much on a character, and it borders on not working. But I think since it's almost comedic, I believe it actually does work. So that would be my number 11 with the 70-30 rule. Okay, I have a couple more. Let me see if there are any questions really quick. Oh, you guys want to see the list? I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. I know I'm kind of writing sloppily. I'm not writing as clean as I normally do. The art creator says, how do you name your art? I can never come up with the names. I feel like they come to me while I'm drawing or before I draw or right as I finish. Oftentimes, like the woven anxiety piece that I've done, I don't have it with me, but it's basically a profile shot of a girl with braids and the braids lead to nowhere. I met someone at a convention and she was really anxious talking to me and she started fidgeting in the air. And I was asking her like, hey, is everything all right? As you seem, something seems a little off. And they said that when they get really nervous or anxious that they braid things when they're at their home. And that since she didn't have anything to braid, she was braiding the air. And that really resonated with me. So I asked if I could take a profile picture of her, and I drew her with these braids that led to nowhere. And I wanted to kind of embody her woven anxiety. And that's where that piece came from. So in my mind, that the title just came to me, and it couldn't be anything else. And I think sometimes with your art, that's how it will be. It will just come to you and it will stick, and you just know. It just feels like that's the right title to give it. Faith says, I meant you are or were sick. Ha, I couldn't make it because I didn't have the money. Oh, Faith. Yeah, definitely you should come next year. Emerald City is a great one. But yeah, I was pretty sick. Lopa says, Shape of Water satisfied my thirst for monster romance very well, and I'm not even ashamed. When me and the roommates watched it, I left the theater with a smile on my face. Even though it was cheesy at a lot of points, I left smiling, and I left in a good mood. And I felt like, man, the power of film can be so influential where if I can leave the theater just in a really good mood just from watching someone's creation, and it to be more of a weird storytelling of a woman falling in love with a fish man. But I think there were so many more deeper layers of acceptance of outsiders regardless of their differences. And I think that's what that movie was trying to explain. And I think they did a pretty good job at it. And they showed different facets of, or different aspects of life of like the gay old man or the woman who cannot speak, or obviously the fish man has very obvious differences, but even the villain, and how different his life was and the pressures that he has. I feel like I wish we would have seen more of a human side, but anyways, this is more of a movie review. But yes, I did like Shape of Water. I respect Del Toro for trying to create something original and different, and I think it worked. And yeah, I was glad that it won. But I would have liked to see maybe 3 Billboards, or actually I think Call Me By Your Name, even though that movie frustrated me when watching it. Lady Bird was actually my number 1 pick, though. I kind of wish Lady Bird would have won. Okay, anyways, Spectre 4 says, I can see your final drawing has very light lines on edges. Do you have any advice about this as well? I tend to make lines really thick and defined. Normally when I'm drawing, I work light to dark. And I think that goes along with patience, which is the number 9 tip. And it's not to rush building your values quickly. And this is another personal opinion. I feel like if I was talking to a comic book artist or someone that works with ink, they would have the opposite advice where they would say, be bold with your darkness and your line strokes and lay them out how you want them. But the way I work is like to build it up. It's almost like an oil painting or someone that builds a home. You kind of build a blueprint, then you build the foundation, build the structures, and then you kind of build the details and the finishing touches last. So I guess find what works best for you, but if you're trying to have lighter lines, try working that way, and maybe it'll work for you. Leo says, hi Tim, no Sean today. I see, just dropping by to say hi. Sadly, missed the stream because I was ice skating, and now I'm sweaty and need to shower. How I'll be watching the recording and hopefully see you next week. Yes, we will see you next week. Sean will be with me, and I'm actually kind of jealous that you went ice skating. That's something I want to do. Hey, Gabe, how are you doing? Gabe says, gave me the con plague. I know. I'm sorry. That's weird because I didn't even share a hotel room with you. I think it was just going around because I got it on like literally the first day I was sick. Fate says, I'm going to try to get a booth next year. You definitely should. Spectre4 says you should tag vonnart so he will notice your questions better. Yes, please do. Please put @vonnart before your comment or question. That way I can see it. Okay, I'll answer a couple more and I'll keep going on the list here. Zatter Hovadio says, did you learn anatomy from photos or from reality? Do you still use some references or do you use freestyle? Sorry for bad English. Hey, it's okay. I still use reference. I think it would be arrogant for me to assume that I can just do anatomy off the top of my head and have it be as close to life as possible. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the basics, but I'm still in the mindset of forever being a student and to look at everything I do with a blank slate, not to just rely on what I've done in the past or what I know. And I think that's why when I'm like the big angel piece that I just started, I took reference pictures of myself in the pose. I try to really get anatomy down and make sure that it feels rooted in reality. Because I think with anatomy and characters, that's something I strive for, is to make the anatomy and proportions feel accurate. So yeah, I still use references. I try to use myself as much as possible. I think we are our own best walking free resource, so why not use ourselves for anatomy practice if we're focused on characters? But I'd still work from photos as well. If like there's a really good photo on Pinterest that inspires me, I'll save it and I'll use that as my like proportion study. Okay, a couple more says, Lopa says, yes, in all seriousness, I think The Shape of Water was great for the messages it conveyed in addition to the monster loving. It was the only nominated movie I watched, so I have no idea if the others deserved it more, but it made me happy. I feel like that's kind of the case with most Oscar movies. I admittedly don't watch like the short films or the foreign films. I always write them down at the Oscars though, and I try to watch them afterwards just because they interest me, and I feel like oftentimes, especially in America, we digest more of the same. It's like the same blockbuster formula that we're just kind of used to, and it's entertaining, so we don't have to think a lot while watching it. But the movies that I really get into are the ones that almost challenge that way of thinking, and the ones that are more interpretive I really like are the ones that have layers of meaning that at different stages in your life will mean something different to you. I think Synecdoche, New York is my favorite movie for those of you who don't know, and I think that movie has a lot of layers to it. Anyways, I could have a movie discussion with you guys on a different day because I could go for hours, honestly. Spectre4 says, thank you very much for the answers. You're welcome. Litzy says, are you from Minnesota originally? You have a great accent. Wisconsin. Definitely that Midwest Northern accent. Ornery Expo says, how do you approach perspective? I back away. I take a look at perspective and take a few steps back and try to stay away from perspective and draw more orthographic as possible. But perspective, I feel like I would have to do a whole stream on, just because it's something, one, I don't feel 100% comfortable doing because I feel like all my stuff is orthographic. But I know from art school and having to draw like hallways in perspective, and there are mathematical tips, especially with like rulers or guidelines in Photoshop. I mean, there's so many of those brushes where they give you that perspective grid. But then if you're doing it traditionally, you definitely want things to line up towards your horizon line and the vanishing points that you use, but obviously not every drawing you're going to like pull out those lines and recreate it. So I do think you have to implement it a little bit. You have to wing it. And oftentimes practice will be your best friend here, because if you do a lot of things in perspective over time, it'll just become a second nature on where to place certain shapes. Okay, I need to keep moving because we're almost out of time here. The next one I have, is to be able to feel it. What does that mean? I know that probably sounds very strange. So the other example that I brought up with me was my merman. And the reason that I have my merman with me is because the scaling on his, the fin part, the tail fin, oh, now my exposure is not working on my camera either. It's going to have to stay this dark. Hold on. I'm going to fix that manually. Give me 1 second here. we're just going to filter this really quick. There we go. So you can see how on his tail fin, there's a lot of detail and texture that I placed on here, and like the starfish, or even if I go lower, let me push, or I guess even on here, the ridges that I created, it's almost like if you could imagine rubbing your finger on it, you could imagine feeling the roughness, the texture of what that would feel like. Or even like the difference between the underside of the fin versus the top of the fin would be more rough, where the bottom would feel maybe more like a snake belly or like a reptile. And even with like his skin up here, I do a little bit of riveting, which are those lines here. And you can imagine, and here's that translucency thing I'm talking about. You can see how I drew the back of his body, but I just lifted it with the eraser. And you can imagine how if you had to feel kind of like the armpit part of his, what would it be called? I don't think it's a fin. I'm kind of blanking on what that would be called. But this part, you can kind of imagine it being very, very thin. And it almost like if you took scissors to it, you could cut it pretty easily, which is kind of dark, but it has a feeling to it versus like his crown or the conch or his tail fin. If you took scissors to it and tried to cut it, it'd be a lot more difficult. And this is literally just on a drawing. So you as the artist, you as the creator, have to create the illusion of texture and something that has a bit of a weight to it. So if you're drawing something that's dense and textured and rough, give it that impression through the way you're shading it, through all the little details. Oops, forgot to turn my phone off before the stream. How unprofessional. And I often like to do that by having this kind of scaling ripple effect, where you can see down here, I'll have like a line that will separate these different ridges, and then I'll shade up. And by doing that, it gives this like elevated ripple look where you can actually kind of imagine it like hills, and you can kind of run your finger down it, and it would be like a bump on each one. So being able to feel it, I think definitely comes with things that are more textured, but you could also say for like if you're doing a sci-fi spaceship, if you're doing a very clean, hard surface, it should read as like a clean, hard surface, and you could like run your finger down it and have that streaky, manufactured sound and feel to it. Versus if you're doing like a tree that's really old and broken and has a bunch of bark on it, you should definitely give it that texture and make it feel like it's old and textured and has a bunch of wounds on it, if you want to call it that. Okay, and I think, I guess, yeah, I have two more. So I'm going to call these rivets. I'm not sure what the actual term is, but oftentimes in my life I make up terms and I just kind of run with it. So what is a rivet? A rivet is the difference between, let's say I did a horn. So imagine if I did, this is the first one, let me do another one. So the difference between, oops, let me move this over. Difference between these two is this one, I'm just going to shade it all the way to the edge. Same with this side. And we're going to have a nice highlight running through the center of it, and it kind of pillow shades out to the edges. Like this. So this would be horn number 1. On horn number 2, though, I could actually start adding these type of rivet type areas, but let me show you the difference if I go all the way up. So all of a sudden, I'm giving more of an impression of texture right off the bat, but also, instead of shading right at the edge, I'm going to give a little space, start shading a little bit up. I mean, imagine, I don't like how dark that line is on the edge. So I'm just going to pretend like the background value is a little darker to offset that. So I'm going to have some bounce light coming on the top of that horn. And then I'm going to have that highlight, which is the same as this one, but it's a little smaller because of the bounce light that we're adding on this side and the bounce light that we're adding underneath, and then this extra little rivet in here. And all of a sudden, this has a lot more potential than the one on the left, because the left one, I mean, I guess I could still add, the riveting to it going down, but the way that it's shaded is very boring. So when I try to do a horn, I try to have kind of similar to the way I would render metal. And, oh, you know what? That might be another tip. Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to include that with this one. And it kind of goes back to rendering different materials differently, but metal specifically kind of falls under this category where if this was like a metallic horn, having this type of rendering where I have dark on the outside and then light on the inside, it may seem accurate because metals are reflective, but since metals are reflective and this is kind of a curved shape, we're going to get reflections on the outside. So the outside is going to have a lighter value, then we're going to get a darker, then a lighter, then a darker, and then a lighter again. When you turn into a 3 type shading into a 5, a layer of shading, or even more, I feel like if you're going all out, you can have even more depending on what type of surface or how even it is. But oftentimes, and mind you, more than 5 can look very complicated and very messy very quick, so be careful with how you use this. But you can kind of see the difference between a dark, light, dark versus a light, dark, light, dark, light. And it has way more dimension to it, and it gives more of a sheen, more of a glossy, metallic appearance. So that would be that. Okay, and my last one, and this one I think is just as important as anomalies in patience, contrast. If you have a character, let me see here. I almost want like a quick character sketch. All right, I'm gonna give me like 1 minute and let me sketch out a little character here. I'm gonna do just a basic T pose to show how you can even turn an uninteresting pose a little more interesting. Maybe I won't give them fully realistic proportions either. Okay, he's got a shirt on, it's tucked in. All right, very basic looking character, right? So the easiest way to turn a character, or literally anything, more interesting, and I kind of learned this from Gawky, who is also my roommate Key, and it's the idea of contrast. So, and you know what? Ooh, I'm gonna blend these two together. Contrast and gradients. Gradients are pleasing to the eye. Regardless if it's digital, traditional, whatever it might be, gradients are pleasing. So to make this instantly more pleasing, we could have the head be more light, and as we go down the body, it just gets a little darker. And you may also notice that when we do that, all of a sudden our eye has more of a direction on where to go. So it's being pushed up toward the face. And all we did is we had a gradient going from dark too light. And I mean, I could even make this more dark. But now this is where contrast can come into play. So like, let's say that back leg was a bit lighter, even though it's still in the dark range, but then the one that's a little closer just becomes a touch darker. And then the hand is darker than the shorts that it's sitting on. So we're still doing gradients going up, but now we're playing with contrast within those gradients. All of a sudden, you kind of see how we have two vocal points. So before, the eye had no idea where to go with the character when it was blank, when it didn't have any shading within it, because us as the artist and as the creator, we're not giving any information for the viewer to look at. But when we add these darker areas, all of a sudden, now we're giving points of interest. We're making it easier for the viewer. And then if you go in, and that's where you can add more of like details and buttons and all that other kind of stuff. But as an overall, you want to look at how your character design is rendered in terms of the contrast and the gradients. Once I learned how to do this, I feel like my pieces really took off because I could see it as a composition, not just as a character. And that was something very important for me to have to learn. So hopefully that can help you guys as well. And that could be with anything, like even with this carrot that we just did down here. Like I really like this carrot, but imagine if it was kind of darker on this end, maybe had some of that reflective surface because it's just got sprayed and spritzed at the market with some water. So it has slightly of a sheen appearance to it. And then it got lighter on the way down. Maybe like the green stem in the front or on the top is the darkest. And then as it recedes back, it gets a little lighter. And then the ones that are further back are just super light, maybe have no shading at all. You can see how all of a sudden this becomes the darkest area. And then as we go up and down the carrot, it gets lighter. So like this is the lightest area, this is the lightest area. But now we gave a point of interest, and now the viewer has something to look at, and then they can go each way. So this is something that I learned like 2 years ago, because that's when I kind of met Key, and she was just talking about the importance of gradients. And I really adopted that. And then I kind of applied my own love of contrast to this gradient theory. And I think that's why I get a lot of like dark hands on light areas. Even with like my swordplay comic, you can see that with other hands. I'll play with like a darker hand in the foreground against lighter skin. And then it instantly meets this dark overall, but then it gradients down into lighter. And then on this side, it gets darker, but not on this side. And I play with contrast and gradients all the time. And it's something that I feel like has really helped my own work, and maybe it will help yours as well. Okay, so those are I guess we have 15 tips that we went over today. So I'll leave it, let me move it up. As I answer these questions here, it kind of works with the framing of Twitch too. Let me finish off these questions and then we're going to end the stream here. Let's see here. Gabe says, I want to see some crazy perspective stuff from you. It's not the first time I've heard that. One day I will. Art Luffy says, I have issues with smudging and then not being able to lift some of the lines off the paper. Do you have any advice for this? Work lighter. Try your best to work left to right if you're right-handed, vice versa if you're left-handed. And maybe start with like a 2H pencil instead of a 2B. And just be more aware of when you're going darker, be confident with going dark there. Because yeah, if you're not confident with it and then you lay it down and you don't like it, it might not pick up. So I think you just have to be a little more conscious when you're working traditionally, because it's not digital. Digital, you can just Control Z, and you can't do that with traditional. I mean, you can erase to an extent, but you also don't want to rely on this too much, because then I think when you make a mistake that you can't erase or lift up, it becomes like, it's like the worst feeling. I don't even know how to describe it, but that's happened with me on a bigger piece, and it sunk me. It really affected me. Lopa says, I think you mean isometric. Orthographic is the one with vanishing points and converging lines and stuff. I'm pretty sure perspective is the one with vanishing lines and converging lines, but I could be wrong. I know in 3D when I worked, my background's actually in 3D modeling. That's where what I went to school for. And in the 3D viewer of 3ds Max, you could change between perspective and orthographic. And perspective would be an actual like camera that if you zoomed in, like let's say, if you were looking at a character, well, this is the worst character. So perspective basically meant that you could see the top of the feet and under their brow. If you were looking at it orthographic, so this is perspective, orthographic basically meant you could not see the top of their foot because everything was like in a flat view. And no matter how far you zoomed in or out, that view would not change. You would never be able to see the top of their foot. But with perspective, if you got closer to the body, you could see the top of their foot. But if you pulled really, really far back, it'd be increasingly more difficult to see the top of their shoe. So that's the way that I was taught the difference between orthographic and perspective, but that could be wrong. That's just what I remember from my 3D classes. Volpix says, love this one. So glad I got one on that short release you did. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You might have to remind me. Zatter Hovadio says, ignore my crappy nick. Just call me Zad or Roman. Hey, that'll make it way more easy. Thank you. Zad says, I want to ask you, do you have some favorite pencils or mechanical pens? Whatever mechanical pencil I can get my grubby hands on works for me. But I do have a 0.2 mechanical pencil, which is how I do all my fine rendering. I don't think I have any on me right now, but you can get it at tokyopenshop.com. And it's actually, did I lay it? I did not. You know what? Before next week, I'm going to add a little section of the tools that I work with so that you guys can buy them if you want. And I'll make sure that those are up before the next stream, which will be next Wednesday. And I'll have Sean back with me. Melpa says, had a great time listening to your stream in studio this morning. I'll have to finish it later. Have a great day, Tim. Thanks for the tips. Hey, thank you, Melpa. Yeah, I'll have this one on YouTube, and most likely it'll be on tomorrow. Fate says, do you plan on posting this whole drawing on Instagram? No. These are some weird looking sketches. I could post a story, I guess, and then link it to the YouTube tomorrow. Yeah, I'll do that. Zad says, so you ignore correct sun reflections sometimes? Yes. I feel like I cheat realism oftentimes because it's fun to break the rules, but I think it's good to know the rules. So I don't necessarily think you should just go into it breaking the rules, even though it's fun, because then when you know the rules and then you break them, it's that much more satisfying. Multison says, how do you avoid injuries drawing all day? This is my favorite stretch. Hey, thank you, Garen XU, for following. And then the one where you pull it back like this, you like clamp your hand and then pull it back with the other arm. Actually, would you guys want me to do like a 1.5 minute tutorial on YouTube of like the stretches I do every morning before I draw, or sometimes wall drawing? And maybe that'll help you guys just like get in a habit of doing it. It takes like 1.5 minutes. Whenever I like want to stretch my hand, I have like a few things, or like pulling the fingers or separating them. Yeah, maybe I'll do that actually. Volpic says the merman. LOL. Oh yes, yeah. Okay. The last ones we got are, Lopa says, oh no, you're right. I thought orthographic was the perspective kind. For some reason, glad you cleared that up. Like I said, these are terms that I vaguely remember in my 3D class, so I'm hoping that those are the right ones. So thank you. Yeah, everyone's saying yes to the tutorial. And okay, lastly, Zad says, by the way, thank you so much for guidance, answering our questions, and for your artwork. You are an amazing, talented person, man. Hey, I appreciate you guys coming to these. I feel, happy doing these, so why wouldn't I do them? And I felt like I learned the most about my art and what has worked and what hasn't through teaching. like it was oddly enough through CG Cookie and learning how to teach, I kind of learned how to draw. And I'm glad that I'm able to pass any knowledge I can to you guys. So thank you for coming. Okay, I'm going to end it there. So thank you so much for coming to these live streams. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Normally I'm joined by my co-host Sean. He'll be here next week. And I don't know what our topic's going to be on, but it might be on feet because that's a challenge I want to work on. Thank you so for following. Okay, that's all I got for today. I'm going to go eat. I've barely eaten today, and I think I need to because I'm getting a little loopy. Okay, take care, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Okay, bye. Bye.